Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, MCPS Superintendent Monifa McKnight forced to resign. As crime keeps rising, Councilmember Jawando proposes new anti-law enforcement legislation. And former state's attorney Marilyn Mosby convicted of mortgage fraud. These stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We are joined by Laurie Halverson, a member of the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, and former House of Delegate member and attorney Maricé Morales. Stay tuned for 21 This Week next. MCPS Superintendent Monifa McKnight resigned her position on February 2nd, following a contentious review of her handling of sexual harassment allegations against former principal Joel Beetleman. McKnight stated in her letter of resignation that the past year has been a distraction, and there is now a question of whom I agreed to serve, and I must control my own fate and reputation. Maricé, the NAACP accuses the Board of Education of making McKnight a scapegoat for their own political reasons. Linda Plummer, president of the Montgomery County chapter of the NAACP, stated this: "It would appear that such a request to resign, is based on factors which are external to Dr. McKnight's performance and comprise a politically expedient solution to address press reports about systemic failures in the MCP process for handling employee complaints." Do you think McKnight was treated unfairly?
You know, Casey, I think Dr. McKnight was given a non-viable journey from the beginning of her appointment. I do agree that the expediency of this process, actually, I don't think that there was really a process. I think there are due process rights here, but Dr. McKnight and her whoever was advising her, I understand that she hired an attorney, chose to go ahead and accept the Board of Ed's request for her resignation. Even the county executive said, the issues underlying the awful management of issues going on with the Board of Ed and the school system predated the superintendent's tenure. We heard from Dr. McKnight herself. Upon her annual performance evaluations, the Board of Ed never expressed any concern about her performance. Never give her, every year she passed with flying colors. So it does come as a surprise. And I think that the NAACP has done a good job of making sure that they're shedding light to this issue. I think that Dr. McKnight does have control over her fate, and if I were in her shoes and I was put into this position, I think I would also follow my counsel's advice.
So we're going to get into this a little later, but the Board of Education issued a public apology on all of this, and a rather incredible statement. But I want to first address this to Laurie. Laurie, as Maricé stated, when McKnight arrived, the school board had already been receiving criticism for the way MCPS oversaw the pandemic, bringing students back into the classroom. And, teachers made the unusual step of declaring that they had no confidence in MCPS. So was McKnight placed in a no-win situation?
Well, all the superintendents across the nation were in the same position. They all had to deal with the same pandemic, and some of them recovered through the process pretty well compared to MCPS. Now, it was a difficult position she was in. There's never a good time to be a superintendent, actually, but I think that the problem was her focus. I think that instead of, when you have no kids in the classroom and they're studying online, and so many are not even watching the screen, there's going to be a problem with academics. And I did not hear a focus on really trying to get these kids back on track academically. Instead, we kept hearing DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, equity everywhere, and how there was the anti-racist audit and that focus on racism. And you know what? It was all about, I looked through the anti-racist audit and not one word about anti-Semitism. So
Yeah.
what was the money spent on that? It was not focused. Even when they do something like that, they don't focus on the right part of what they should be focusing on. So
we got to focus on really what happened with Beetleman and how he was hired, and take a look at that. And Maricé, as I mentioned, the Board of Education, the president of the Board of Education, issued a public policy in a letter. Rather amazing. I think it was because they were being pressured by the county council to really come clean on what the problem was. But it seems, to many observers, that McKnight was fired because, they were covering up the Board of Education was getting the heat. They were covering up their own problems. And, we saw a similar situation with the planning board last year. The council stepped in and started making changes.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, council member Don Lukey, actually, I think she tweeted about this, or the new platform X mentioned, okay, well, there's a change in leadership, but still there's no transparency as to what happened here. And I agree. I think the Board of Education did, in response to public pressure and also from the MCCPTA and other stakeholders. I mean, in Carla Silvestra's, the Board of Ed president's own comments, she acknowledges that, that the Board of Ed has not listened to its own employees, has not properly investigated complaints, and it has also not created a process that encourages employees to feel safe to come forward, dealing with this, incredible sexual harassment and promotion scandal. It's devastating to watch a woman of color. And I think in response to what Laurie was mentioning earlier, the reason why there's conversation about equity was because the county council had just applied the equity and DEI lens to all of the policies. So that's why, and Dr. McKnight was coming in as the prior superintendent decided to retire at the time of the pandemic. So, that oftentimes when it comes to crises, when you need the leaders to step up, sometimes the people that are like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and bow out when I still have a good track record. And so then
that's the thing that bothers me the most about this, Maricé and Laurie. Both of the fact that there were numerous complaints about Beetleman and his sexual harassment, whether they were hostile work environment issues or true sexual harassment issues. I mean, they didn't take these things seriously, which is really, I think, the most disturbing
and this
part.
has been going on for years. I mean, when I was in PTA in 2010 at the county level, there were so many principals who were not, who were moving to other places, moving up to headquarters, and we knew about their background, but we were always in PTA asking for some kind of a process where you could share the information from the other school, but it looks like they wouldn't share that. But now it looks like they're going to be doing that with a new software system. So I'm really pleased to hear that. I hope it really happens.
Well, this is a kind of a question, and I'll address it to Maricé first, and then to you, Laurie. I just checked the reading proficiency for Montgomery County schools, and it's at 45% of students are reading at grade level. If I were a parent with a child in Montgomery County, I wouldn't be happy with that.
No,
that you're setting, obviously if 55% of the students can't read and write when they get out of Montgomery County schools, they're destined for failure.
Mm-hmm.
The school system needs to focus more on the fundamentals, in my opinion. What do you think?
I totally agree with that. So what I said earlier, I think the new interim superintendent I'm wondering if she'll possibly become the superintendent. Monique Felder, her focus is equity from when she was back in North Carolina. So I hope she's also going to look at other things. And, we do want to close the gap, but we also want to raise the bar for everyone. Everyone.
Look, we have an African-American governor who in his book attributes his success to his grandmother sending him to in his case, a military school so he could learn and be educated. Why can't those same principles filter down in our public school system? Maricé, I'll let you have the last word here.
Well, I'm actually a product of public schools, but I was going to say, in terms of the checks and balances here, when we're not happy with the product that we're receiving, we have to hold those people accountable. But in reality, when you look at the Board of Ed, the people who vote, we're talking about less than 1% of voters are even aware that they have these representatives for their school districts. So I think there was a question about, is there going to be a day of reckoning? When we're looking at the results of this firm, Jackson Lewis, that was hired by the Board of Ed to look at especially what was happening in the Department of Compliance and Investigations, what they discovered is that they didn't take any complaints or investigations seriously when it came to anonymous sexual harassment complaints.
Maricé, I hate breaking you off. We're running out of time. And of course, my solution to all of this is school choice and vouchers. Parents should have the opportunity to choose the schools they want to send their kids to.
I disagree.
They will see a difference. Anyway, when we come back from this short break, I trot out that old chestnut every chance I get. So when we come back from the short break, crime keeps rising. And what will the political impact be in Baltimore now that Marilyn Mosby has been found guilty of fraud? Stay tuned.
When I first saw Turtle, my heart was full. Now I'm anything but lonely.
We had this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all. If I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Welcome back. Councilmember Will Jawando was well known as a social justice warrior during his 2 terms in the Montgomery County Council and is credited with authoring many laws designed to address social justice issues, and he's been quite successful at it. This week, he introduced the Freedom to Leave Act, which effectively prohibits law enforcement from asking a motorist who's been stopped whether they would consent to a search of their vehicle, a routine procedure employed by police. Maricé, the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution prohibits unlawful searches and seizures, and in criminal law practice, there is generally a motion filed by defense challenging whether any such search was voluntary or coerced or constitutional. So is this bill necessary?
I love this question, Casey. First, we understand that us, educated folks, maybe lawyers, we understand our Fourth Amendment rights. However, when in practice, even me as a defense attorney, when I feel a police officer behind me, I already start getting nervous. Why? Because it brings me back to my child years when I was in the car with my father, and my father would hold on to the wheel and be extra careful on the road because he knew that he would get profiled. Now, what this means is, I don't know that the bill is necessary. Honestly, I don't know that we can do it in the county without going through the state first, but I understand the issue here. And that is, while we understand that the Fourth Amendment has these protections, when it comes down to, real life scenarios, how many people will actually feel safe in their skin to say, no, officer, you can't check my vehicle? And so I understand that. I think it sheds light into getting communities to understand their rights, et cetera. But I think it's a false, it's a false choice to say, you're either pro law enforcement or against it. Listen, I'm all about law enforcement, and I love the officers that I get to work with in the courthouse. I have a lot of respect for them, but at the same time, I know that there are issues that we need to address in our in terms of the contact between police and communities.
Well, I get that, but my experience has been, and I wasn't a prosecutor for more than 6 months. I did a stint in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C.
Okay.
My experience was that the criminals were well aware of what they could do and what they couldn't do. But Laurie, I realize you're not an attorney, and so perhaps this question about constitutionality really doesn't focus for you. But as a citizen, as crime continues to rise, is this the right approach and message that we're sending in our community?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I didn't know this rule either about that you can say no, or if they can ask you that question. So I learned something from this today. But you know what? I think that if they ask, and now that I know I can say no, I would probably say no, just because who knows what I might have in my car. I know I don't have a gun, but I would just say no. Just because
my point exactly.
This is a true confession.
They might find an old, chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A or something down there. Who knows? But I do feel that Will Jawando just is always focusing on issues that divide us, and he's always talking about disparities. I loved that when he was inaugurated, he wore a Nigerian outfit. I was really thinking that is cool. I love that he was pointing out how it's important to recognize our differences. But I think now it's time for him to realize he's an at-large member and of the county council, and he needs to look at other things and remember that he's representing everyone. And look at things that help everyone, not hurt police, not hurt, the police need to do their job. And I feel like this helps them. They claim that this rule helps them do their job.
I'll tell you, the one statistic that he released was, which kind of, I think, undercuts his argument, was that there was less than 0.5% of cars that were searched that had contraband in it, which you typically would sound that, such searches are rather benign. I mean, anyway, we got to go on. We got one more important topic to talk about, and that's what's going on up in Baltimore. And, it's not often that we on this show try to understand the political workings of Baltimore City. I mean, that's an operation in its own making. Yet once again, a story happens that forces us to take notice. And this is a relevant story about our political system and justice. This week, former state's attorney for Baltimore City, Marilyn Mosby, was found guilty of mortgage fraud. Maricé, Marilyn Mosby, and her husband, Baltimore City Council President, were considered Baltimore royalty when she won election as Maryland state's attorney for Baltimore City. What happened here?
So many things to say, Casey. First, they are both friends of mine. Marilyn and I were actually elected the same year. We kind of went up the similar kind of legal cohorts of rising women in the Democratic Party. And then Nick Mosby was actually my seatmate. Both, zealous defenders of the city, grew up in the city, and I know that their hearts were always in the right place. Without a doubt, there were bad decisions made. At the same time, though, Marilyn Mosby had a target on her back from the day that she was elected. And what I mean about that is that she had the conservative media completely on her back 365 days a year, to the point where she needed to have security for her children. She had individuals showing up at their home, individuals following their kids to school. I mean, it was just the amount of attention after the Freddie Gray, uprising and and all the aftermath from that. It's when you're a public servant trying to undo decades of just policies that are racist and that just really keep a certain community down. I mean, you're going to piss off a lot of people. And so, I don't know how this young couple have been able to stomach everything that they've been through. Like I said, they have made mistakes, which is why she was convicted. When you have a magnifying glass during the pandemic and you're a human being trying to, do the best for your city, something's going to come up. And if she followed, I'm not a real estate person. And Casey, you have a title company. When it comes to housing and lending and mortgages, et cetera, there are products that exist out there that people with other degrees can better explain than I can, but things that you would never realize that are legal. And so many people can get away with it. But when it happens to a public servant that's really trying to make a change, they really want to make an example out of it.
It is a shame that she got caught up, but frankly, she did err. At least the court has found that she erred, and I assume she was going to appeal her conviction. But right now, it appears that she skated outside the lines a little bit. But I want to talk about the political ramifications. I'm not sure whether the divorce of Marilyn and Nick were, related to the criminal case that was filed against Mrs. Mosby, but they've now divorced. Mr. Mosby, Nick Mosby, is announced for re-election. He'll be running again for re-election this year in November. So is there going to be any negative fallout and consequences towards him? He wasn't charged in the case, towards him as a result of this conviction. Laurie, I'll give you the first word, and then Maricé, we got about a minute each for
what a mess. I'm just saying, what a mess they both got themselves into. And Marilyn was making $250,000 a year. I'm not sure how much Nick was making as president of the council in Baltimore. But my gosh, like there aren't that many couples that make that much money, and they couldn't manage their finances, and they were lying to the public. That's the big thing. I mean, Nick was falsely claiming thousands of dollars as charitable deductions on his tax forms, and he lied to the public about tax liens on his mortgage. And he committed tax fraud. So
you think there's going to be fallout that affect him?
I don't know. Maybe they cut a deal or something like that. But I maybe that.
Well, the voters are going to have to decision.
But I just feel like why do they keep electing someone now that they know this about him? Are they going to re-elect him? And he seems like a well-meaning guy. I watched him on an interview yesterday. I think his heart is.
I'm going to have to wrap. You're going to have to wrap it up because I need Maricé to get in here for the last word. Maricé.
I was just going to say that this is in the context of a presidential candidate that just yesterday, his counsel was heard in front of the Supreme Court, where in reality, if you have the means to get counsel that is, that most people cannot afford, then you can get away with it. Marilyn Mosby had a public defender. You have to qualify for that. Now, again, I'm not saying that, for any reason that what she did was correct. I'm just saying that, when society wants to make an example out of certain people, they can pick and choose. And that is a discretion that our prosecutors have. But I would say, Nick and Marilyn are both very much loved by their city. And, at this point, I don't know why the prosecutors only went after Marilyn. Again, woman of color. Nick had something to do with it.
They're not. The decision by the prosecutor. They're all Democrats. This is not a political prosecution. I don't think. So I think we have to look at it that they were looking to enforce something about public corruption. When we come back from this short break, stay tuned for Parting Shots.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right because a few hours ago in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Now with parting shots, Laurie Halverson.
Okay, so today we're taping, and it's actually the deadline for filing to run for office. And I checked my Twitter feed my X feed this morning, and saw that Kim Klacik has filed to run for Congressional District 2, which is a vacancy because Dutch Ruppesberger is vacating the seat. So that's pretty awesome, I think. And it'll be fun to see how many other people decide to run today.
Thank you, Laurie. Maricé Morales, your parting shot.
Yes, absolutely. So going into the second week of February, it is Black History Month. This week we had our governor, Wes Moore, give the State of the State address to the legislature, General Assembly. And I was very, very inspired by his words, was very proud to be a Marylander. We have a lot of work to do, but some of the issues that he highlighted were the issues that we talked about today, Casey, and that is that Marylanders want, first and foremost, public safety is on everybody's mind. We also want to make sure that we have equitable policies so that, so that individuals of color don't feel like they're being over-policed. He also talked about making sure that Maryland is more affordable, from housing to then to opening up Maryland for business. But it's been a wonderful tenure for the governor, and I hope that we continue to see their victories.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to talk about the inaugural address, but I didn't have enough time to prepare to discuss it this week. I want to thank you both for appearing. Great conversation, some tough topics. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.